the smartest policy mind in the state legislature. I know she's going to be missed, but she's going to be happy to be home. To Senator Berman and Representative Skidmore, thank you for your counsel and your support. And to each one of you, thank you for braving the sunshine today. It was a monsoon last time we were here, a monsoon. But listen, when we were here last, I got into the governor's race maybe 14 months ago. And I went all around the state. I said I'm doing what Lawton Childs did. I'm just driving, not walking. But I've been in every community. And a year ago, I was just begging people, please just open your hearts and open your minds a little bit, because I think there's an opportunity for change this cycle. I think there's an opportunity. I'm just asking you to believe. Well, that was a year ago, folks. Tonight, I'm afraid we're going to win this race. Because when I say we, I mean us, all of us, voters across the state of Florida who have said we have had enough, that it is time for change. Folks, I believe we are a nation in crisis. We are a nation in crisis. We are a state in crisis. We are a nation that is broken, and we are more divided than ever before. We know it. Neighbor against neighbor, family member against family member. And the truth is, we are presented each day with division and asked to choose a side. I think the reality is, instead of choosing a side, we should just choose to be together for a moment. We should choose to be together for a moment. And I am running as a proud Florida Democrat because I have found my home. But I want to say welcome tonight to the independents and Republicans who are in the room tonight. You don't have to identify yourself. But I know you're here. I know you're here. Let me introduce a little bit about my journey, and there's a reason I welcome the Republicans, because I used to be one. I used to be one. Some of you know my journey, others don't. I'll share a little bit about it. But my wife and I live up in Pinellas County. Our 2 young children are 7 and 5. Right? Right. I'm 53. You don't have to Google it. They're 7 and 5, and every day's a Monday. It really is. You know, they're out of school, so my wife is with them for about 2 weeks with Grandma, and I'm on the road solo, and I get all the phone call reports, and I'll tell you, I miss them dearly, but then I hang up the phone and think, I don't have to deal with any of that right now. I was born in Pinellas. I lived in Miami-Dade for about 10 or 12 years. Moved to Pasco, where I graduated from high school. I've lived in Pensacola. I'm a 5th-generation Floridian. I've lived all over the state. I believe deeply in this state, but I say this all the time. My wife and I, with 2 young children, some days ask ourselves if we should raise our kids in the state. For reasons that you all know very well as well. Whether you have kids or grandkids or no kids at all, this is a state that is slipping away from too many people. We are gripped by an economic crisis. We're exhausted by culture wars. And we're watching the state and the country careen towards outright corruption. And it's wrong. That's why tonight we know we're a nation that's broken, a nation that's divided. A little bit more about my background. I want to touch on 2 things. Faith and politics. Yeah, don't leave, I promise you it's not that bad. I speak openly about my faith. I don't skip over it, right? When you ask somebody who they are, tell me about yourself. I live in Pinellas County, I'm married, I have 2 kids, I'm a lawyer, I was on TV, I was in Congress. Yes, I speak about my faith because it's part of who I am. But I also recognize that the role of the governor is not to evangelize, it's to secure freedom for people, to choose to practice or not practice at all. And I've also been in politics long enough to not be so foolish. I know in South Florida we start in the Old Testament. Yeah. As you move north, you move to the New Testament, and by the time you get to the Panhandle, it's the full-blown Gospels, folks. And guess what? I love it all. I love it all. I sat in a Haitian church in Miami where all they spoke was Creole, and I stood up and I danced and I didn't understand a single thing. But I knew we were worshiping the same God that I choose to believe in. But I also talk about my faith for this reason. In a state that launched culture wars 8 years ago based on the perversion, I believe, of the teachings of faith, the basics of faith, I think it's time we have a governor who understands their personal and private faith stops at the steps to the State House. That is what the Constitution requires. That is what the Constitution ordains. And the people of faith, whatever your faith might be, it doesn't weaken that faith, it strengthens it. But I also want to recognize tonight that there are people throughout this state who choose no faith at all, identify as atheists or agnostics, who on most days are far more charitable than those of us who practice faith. And whether, yes, the agnostics, let's hear it. But I say it for this reason. You don't have to be a person of faith to believe in Thomas Jefferson's natural rights of man. The values that thread us all together, whatever your orientation is, you know that we are a state that believes in some basic values. And so what are those values that I often talk about? I mentioned I was a Republican. I spent 5 or 6 years as an independent. I'm a proud Democrat because I found a political home that celebrates values that I believe are right for the country and right for the state. I do. And so I want to share with you the values that are represented in this campaign that are rooted deeply in democratic traditions, from FDR to JFK to Obama and so many others, but they're values big enough to tether together a coalition with the independents and Republicans who know as well in this moment that it is time for change. So I'm going to share with you some of those values, and then I'm going to close with how we win, because we're going to win this race. We're going to win the governorship this November. And then we'll open it up to some questions and answers and have as much dialogue as we can. So what are the values that I often talk about rooted in democratic tradition? I think there are 3 values that have made America a place of great strength, Since World War II, we've made responsible social investments, recognizing that the most number of people should be provided economic mobility and the opportunity to create their own fortunes. So how do we do that? As a state and as a country, first, we should believe, and I know you all do, and the Democratic Party does, and I do, and many independent and Republican friends do as well. We believe that the economy should work for everyone. The economy should work for everyone. Now listen, I congratulate success, folks. I'll tell you that. A lot of people have worked very hard. They've created great opportunities in their life. They have found financial wealth. They have found professional satisfaction. Congratulations. God bless you. What's working in the state of Florida, let's keep it going. You deserve the success you have found. Some people have gotten lucky. Congratulations even more to those. But the economy's not working for everybody, and we know that. This is bigger than an affordability crisis. We are gripped by an economic crisis. Half of the state today does not have enough savings to last 2 weeks. 2 weeks. They can't afford a job loss, a car repair, a health disruption, a broken relationship, a broken air condition. They can't afford to live. We have more people going without health care than ever before in the state of Florida. And in a state that abandoned public education, we have families who don't know where to educate their kids because we've set up a choice program that charges tuition on top of vouchers. The reality is the economy is not working for everybody. It should. So the first value is the economy should work for everyone. The second value is that government can do its part, do just a little bit to make our lives better. Now look, where the private sector has a solution, let's go, let's chase it, let's incentivize it, and let's follow it because it's often more efficient. But we know that there are certain things that the private sector will never solve for us simply because there's no model for it. What am I talking about? The 3 pillars of people's personal economy: housing, healthcare, and education. Let's talk about homeowners for a little bit. The housing crisis for both renters and homeowners. But let's go with homeowners right now. I'll give you an example of where there's not a private market solution for something we're facing. The homeowners insurance market has collapsed in Florida, and it's not coming back because we've denied climate science and climate change for so long. The private sector will not come into a state like Florida and cover hurricanes and wind damage. It might do it at a very high rate, but consider who's not here. None of the major carriers are willing to do it because there's not a private sector solution for covering natural disasters. It's true for wildfires in California, floods in Texas, tornadoes in Tornado Alley. So yes, I think we need a state catastrophic fund in the state of Florida to remove hurricane and wind coverage from the private market, put it in a state sovereign wealth fund, and cut insurance by 60 to 70%. This is great. You know what? I introduced a national catastrophic fund when I was in Congress. I was a Republican then. Today I'm a Democrat. Guess what? I believe in the same principles, even though my label switched. But I will tell you this. My Republican friends call a catastrophic fund socialism. Yeah. I just call it cheaper insurance, but I'll tell you this. Guess what? They have a hurricane fund right now, I believe up to $8 billion. And you know what it's used for? To back up and bail out insurance companies. So I don't know what they want to call socialism, because I think we should take some of those proceeds and benefit ratepayers and homeowners instead of the insurance companies. insurance companies ship their profits out of state and keep their losses here. There's no check on what they pay their CEOs. They deny 50% of the claims, and when the big storm happens, they up and they leave. And for that, you're paying twice of what you were paying 5 or 10 years ago. You see, the market's collapsed, and government can do its part to improve our lives. A lot of renters are now struggling to live in the communities in which they work. The good news is we have models that work, public-private partnerships that we can make a historic investment in, deliver more entry-level units so that more people can live in the community in which they work. The reality is my opponents on the other side of the aisle just don't find that a worthwhile investment of government. They want to trust the private sector fully. If you sit with the housing developers, they will tell you their biggest profit margin is in selling the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, single-family home in suburbia. Their greatest profit margin is not in providing affordable and workforce housing in urban corridors, which is why the government can step in and do a little bit more to improve our lives. Housing, healthcare, and education. When I talk about it, healthcare, I say this: we should be a state that expands Medicaid. We should be a state that expands Medicaid. We're one of only 10 states that hasn't, and guess what we've discovered by studying the other 40? We study the other 40 states and we realize it improves qualitative outcomes. It improves health outcomes for individuals, and it's an economic return to the state. The only reason this state hasn't expanded Medicaid is because it was the idea of a guy named Barack Obama. And the reality is too many Republican legislators are busy litigating Barack Obama's legacy than focusing on health care for Floridians. And it's wrong. It's wrong. So yes, we should expand Medicaid, but I'll tell you something, in the tour across Florida over the last 14 months, I think the crisis is bigger than that. I'm not sure we have time for Medicaid expansion. Yes, we're going to fight for it, and I think the people of Florida want it, but we could do something right now. Let's scale up the direct delivery of primary health care in counties across the state, regardless of the ability to pay. And this gets fun, guys, because guess what? On Fox News, my Republican opponents say, oh, that's Mandami talk. No, it's not. Yeah, some people are excited about that. Congratulations. Listen, it doesn't require a big new government program. I'll give you some examples right now. We currently service underserved communities in Broward through county health clinics. A little town, a little district called Brownsville in Pensacola through federally qualified health centers. In Little Haiti in Miami, it's a faith-based nonprofit that sees 300 patients a week, regardless of the ability to pay. And when they do that, they improve qualitative outcomes and they reduce the cost to taxpayers. So, whether you're a progressive that believes in delivering more health care or you're a conservative that wants to see your taxes reduced, guess what? When we extend the delivery of primary health care to more communities, we get both. I don't care what your labels are. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a conservative, a progressive, a moderate. It doesn't matter. When we fix health care, we save people's lives and we save people money. It just makes good sense. It just makes good sense. Housing, healthcare, and education, and I'll finish with education in terms of some things that government can do to improve our lives, and it's not to skip past safe communities and environment. We're going to fight all those big fights as well. We're going to recognize climate science. We're going to make sure we protect communities. We fight crime without fighting communities, which is currently what this governor likes to do. But let's talk about education for a moment. We are a state that over 20 years ago we made a choice. We made a choice through our leaders. It was a choice. It was a deliberate choice to abandon and attack and defund public education, and it was the wrong choice. It was the wrong choice. And as a result, 25 years later, we pay our public school teachers dead last in the nation. Dead last in the nation. It's a moral wrong. We are the 3rd largest state with the 4th largest GDP, and we have made a choice to abandon our public education system and our public school teachers, and it's wrong. We are 40th in per capita spending. And my opponents on the other side of the aisle like to point at 4th grade test scores and say, look, 4th graders are doing great. Anytime you hear that, ask them about 8th grade test scores. Because by 8th grade, we are losing our kids through the pipeline. We have a recruitment and retention problem with teachers who remain in their jobs out of the sheer love and commitment and passion they have for changing a kid's life, but we keep kicking them while they're down, and we keep making their lives and their jobs harder. The truth is we need a 10-year renaissance in public education. It starts with a choice. It starts with a choice. Be a state that chooses to lead the world in public education. Not just Alabama and Mississippi, God bless them, choose to lead the world, China and India and everyone else. Why? Because Florida's families are desperate for it. It improves kids' lives, it creates more opportunity, and it creates a more resilient economy when we do it. Sure, we can push for innovation, we can work with the unions, we can work with the schools, and we should. But the reality is, what we have currently done is abandon public education, stood up a choice program with no rules. And so I'm looking around the room, I don't know how many parents there are of first graders in this room. If that's the case, good on you. Maybe grandkids. So my wife and I have a rising second grader and a pre-K. And we learned something. Do you know a choice school in the state of Florida does not have to teach a first grade kid to read? Right. So I'm sharing this if you don't have a first grader. Now, it turns out it wasn't our kid. Our daughter's going to be just fine in life. Our son is never leaving the house, but our daughter, and he said that. He told my wife he wants to be a stay-at-home dad. And he means our home. He means he wants my wife to raise his children. God bless the partner that this kid finds in life. But our daughter's going to be governor before I am at this rate. She's going to be just fine. But look, we learned something through this process of all the choice schools and the public schools and so forth. A first grade kid in a choice school today doesn't have to learn to read, and the school doesn't have to teach them. In fact, they get to kick them out and send them back to public school. Talk to an elementary public school teacher and they'll tell you in the spring they start to bring all these kids back from their choice schools. The voucher schools keeps the voucher, and the public school gets stuck with the kids who can't read. Because while we have thousands of pages of requirements and expectations on our public schools, we only have dozens of pages of requirements on our choice schools. Listen. It's very simple. Let's create a public education system that people want to rush into, that leads the world, okay? And once we do that, I'm okay to keep choice, but there's a whole new set of rules. If you take a public dollar, you got to provide the same services, standards, offerings, and academics. You're going to have the same testing, the same credentialing. You're going to have to provide the same services, academics, access to the arts, to the trades. You can do it through matriculation agreement where part of that voucher goes back to the public school. But if you're taking public money, you've got to deliver services that our public schools have to deliver. And then I'll tell you this. If you take a voucher, we're either going to means test it or you're going to have to cap the rate of tuition at the cost of that voucher and not charge tuition on top of that. Because folks, look, a year or so into this race, I speak with more blunt language. We're done with the niceties. That was the agnostics over here. We all remember how Jeb Bush sold us school choice. Underserved communities, dare I say black and brown communities, in need of economic mobility and in need of educational choice. And we were sold school choice. Guess what? Universal vouchers with no means testing economically disenfranchises the very communities that Jeb said he was going to help. Think about it. These vouchers now don't benefit underserved and economically challenged communities. They benefit white suburban communities. We went to universal school vouchers, and in the first year, 70% of recipients were already enrolled in private schools. They didn't need the financial assistance. It was just a $5 billion gift from public schools into our private schools with no expectations. Folks, we have an education crisis in the state of Florida. I say this as a dad, forget about me as a candidate. I don't know where to educate my kids in the state of Florida tonight. Because the local public schools have been abandoned. We have our teachers and our administrators and our volunteers giving it everything they got. But the politicians are making it harder for them to deliver for our kids. And then you look down the street at the shiny new choice school with the new classroom, the technology, the ball field, and it all looks great, but guess what? They charge you tuition on top of that, and they don't have to teach your kids to read. That's a crisis. I don't care what your party registration is. What are we doing in the state of Florida? Because it's not focusing on educating our kids, and it's not fighting for taxpayer stewardship. We have chased choice, and I would say we have chased corruption in the school choice program. Corruption. We all know that my likely opponent makes a whole lot of money off of the school choice program. We know that the money has come in from private equity backers to Byron Donalds' campaign to further a school choice program with no rules and accountability, but enough money left over to profit Erica Donalds. And that's wrong. It's wrong. How about we have a governor that fights for Florida's kids instead of fighting for their own pocketbook? This is on the ballot in November. The economy should work for everyone. Government can improve people's lives. The last value I speak about, and it's sad that it's controversial, it shouldn't be, and I know in this room it's not. We should be a place where absolutely everyone's rights are protected and where their dignity is celebrated, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship. Folks, that's a value. That's a value. Protecting people's rights, we have a playbook for it. It's called the Constitution. We can litigate, we can go into courts, we win some, we lose some, but over the long course of history, that arc bends towards progress. But in a state that launched culture wars, it's bigger than just constitutional protections. Sure, with constitutional rights, we're going to fight to return reproductive freedom to every woman across the state. The franchise and suffrage of every person across the state of Florida. But celebrating everyone's dignity is bigger than our politics. It's bigger than the Constitution. It's bigger than the laws. And as I mentioned at the get-go, whether you're informed by faith or Jefferson's natural rights of man, we know the purpose of the great American experiment. Though we got so much wrong at the beginning and there have been darker chapters along the way, we know that that experiment has been in pursuit of justice for the most number of people. Culture wars have victims. Culture wars have victims. When you're marginalized based on who you love, or based on where you were born, or based on the color of your skin, or because you participate in a minority religion. Folks, it's wrong. It's wrong. The attacks on DEI out of Tallahassee did not happen because our St. Patrick's Day parades got too big. It didn't happen because churches like mine started to have picnics. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen because the synagogues grew too much. The attacks on DEI happened because black and brown and LGBT communities found their voice in Florida politics. And it scared too many people. And it scared too many people. The bias is ugly, and it has to be called out for what it is. Listen, I am somebody that believes in my heart. Whether it's because I'm an attorney, I study history, or just because. It's obvious, right in front of our eyes. The disparate impact in our communities from centuries of discriminatory policy. The disparate impact still exists today. The economic disparity between the races is greater today than on the day Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. The disparity in health outcomes, in educational opportunities, in entrepreneurship. The investment allocations of the state investment fund deliberately underperform other states when it comes to diversity of investments because of choices that have been made. So if that is the value, what is the answer? If we believe that everyone's rights should be protected and their dignity celebrated, let's go through a couple things. That means the culture wars end on day one. On day one. I don't often think about election night and the days after that, right? When you're in an intense campaign, you got to win the day, win the week, win the month, and you keep on going. But I was driving across Alligator Alley a few months back, and I thought, what is it, the urgency of this? What is the passion behind this? And what came to me is something I want to have the opportunity to do on election night. When the cameras are rolling, I want to have the opportunity to say to the world, on behalf of the state that launched culture wars, we apologize. We apologize. Everyone is welcome in Florida. We want you to live here, to call it home. We want you to visit here. We want your snowbird friends to come back. How do we do that? What does it look like? Let's start with education again. How about this? Let teachers teach. Let teachers teach. Bring back the books. Bring back the books. Every child in the state of Florida should know about the Rosewood Massacre. Massacre. They should know about the Groveland Four. They should know that Harry T. Moore was murdered on Christmas Day for having the audacity to register voters of color. They should know about the Pulse nightclub. They should learn about Harvey Milk before they fly through the San Francisco airport for the first time. They should know about the Stonewall Museum down here, and they should know that Republicans have made it harder to fund the Stonewall Museum than it should be. It does not weaken us or shame us to know our history. It strengthens us. And we will never recognize the darker chapters of the present if we don't learn the darker chapters of our past. This does not have to be an ambitious, progressive platform. This is about who we are as a people. Part of who we are a people that benefit when we actually accept science and data and math and public health. It's one of my favorite points in the town hall, and I know Tina knows what's coming next. Because guess what? Guess what I get to do on my very first day in office? I get to fire the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. Fire the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. Someone asked me recently, would you bring back all the vaccine requirements? And I said, I think so, but more importantly, that's not my decision. I'm going to put somebody into the Surgeon General office that understands science and public health and data, and I'm going to follow their recommendations. It means putting people in charge of our Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission that understand conservation and not just development. It means putting people in charge of our Public Service Commission that regulates our utilities, academics who understand clean and renewable energies, how to provide for the future of our climate science and get the backs of ratepayers. Yes, and it means putting in charge of our state university system, people who understand institutional autonomy, institutional advancement, academic excellence, and opportunity for all, and yes, the import and impact of diversity in an education environment. Some of you may understand this, others may not. We were at FIU recently. Tina was there. And I made a comment under my administration, I'm not going to let any more politicians fail up into the presidency of universities. When I said that, I realized where I was standing, and I thought they were going to turn the lights off on us. Folks, listen, my leadership style, I have something that I say sometimes gets a laugh because it's true. I say, look, I don't think this governor is the smartest person in the state. But your next governor is not going to be either. The difference is I know that and he doesn't. I desperately want for my kids sober adult leadership of the state in which we've chosen to raise them. That means surrounding myself with people smarter than I am, subject matter experts, more capable. I know where we want to go as a state, but it's going to take people from all walks of life, some from education, some from the environment, some from medicine. Choose it. But also it means people from different lived experiences in different communities. Because when we have a state government that looks like our state, our qualitative outcomes improve. We also know generationally that when we have a state government that looks like our state, we are gifting something very special to our youth, a vision of opportunity in their own lives. The first woman who went into space said what was most special about it was that young girls understood that they could do it too. That you can't be what you can't see. It is okay as a society to say, we want to create a state government that looks like our state because it improves our outcomes, but it creates opportunities for kids and ultimately a more resilient economy. Listen, I'll wrap with this. I'm sorry I went on a little long, but I'll wrap with this before questions. I mentioned I was going to tell you how we were going to win. Folks, if the election were tonight, we'd win this race. If the election were tonight in the state of Florida is going to elect a Democratic governor. That is what is happening. Because I don't believe we are in a deeply ideological moment, even though my Republican friends want to tell us we are, we're not. Socialism, communism, trans, boogeyman, whatever it is. People don't care anymore. Their lives are harder. Life is more expensive. The nation's broken and we're more divided than ever. Don't come at us about communism and socialism and all that garbage we hear on Fox News. This is about who's going to build a coalition to fix the future of the state of Florida. And on our side of the aisle, we are willing to fight and make that happen. And I know there are independents and Republicans willing to come along with us. But not all of them. Because some of them standing for election right now for governor on the other side of the aisle have already been bought off. They've already been bought off. Somebody asked me last night, Jolly, what is it? What's the one thing you want us to know about your candidacy for governor? And I said, I'm unbought. I'm unbought. We're getting to the point of this race where we got to have hard conversations as a state. If we believe that after 30 years we are in crisis and we need to do something differently, then the question in front of the state is change versus more of the same. Let me tell you what more of the same looks like. More of the same looks like $9 million in donations from a private equity interest to make sure you vote against a bipartisan housing bill to make housing more affordable. That's what Byron Donalds did after taking $9 million in private equity money. It means taking money from the for-profit school system to make sure we continue the path of attacking and destroying public education. It means taking money from the utility companies to bless the largest rate increase in American history, which is what's happened in the state of Florida. It means taking money, millions of dollars, from the casinos to make sure that they can continue their economy well without you continuing yours. I personally believe in the public financing of campaigns. It didn't take me running for governor to believe that. But I will tell you this. Take the candidates out of this for a moment. Who controls Tallahassee right now? And who's trying harder than ever to keep controlling it? Because in a moment of generational change, where our nation's politics are saying, burn the ships, we're going in a new direction, the number of people who are threatened by this aren't all the elected officials, it's also the special interests that have given over $100 million to Byron Donalds at this point. Guess what? We don't need the money that he has because we've got the people on our side. We've got the people on our side. I was sitting with a utility company recently, and I could tell they were a little tepid. They had asked for this meeting, and I thought, I know what this means. You think we can win too. But I said, listen, don't be scared. We're not adversaries. I'm going to tell you right up front what we need. We need to be a state that moves to clean and renewable energy, and we need to fight for ratepayers. And if you're willing to do that, tell us how to incentivize that type of utility and corporate behavior, because that's how the partnership should work. And by the end of the meeting, the representative said, you know what? This is exactly what we want to do. The problem is, in their words, if they move towards clean and renewables, the governor whacks them with Green New Deal language, and the president comes down on their head. And they're terrified in the state of Florida to be good corporate citizens and actually try to address climate science and move towards clean and renewable energies. Why? Because we have the most corrupt system in Tallahassee of any state in the country. So yes, that is going to be a focus of this. Part of the economic crisis is that the wrong people are in charge in Tallahassee. And we're trying to return to leadership in Tallahassee, a coalition capable of change. I promise I will end with this. Some of you have heard this story, and again, you know, campaigns refine you. They refine you, and you get back to the basics. We could talk all night about policies, and I could put you to sleep. I promise you I could do it quickly. But you start to really think, what are the races about? What's the race about? What's the race about? And so I was meeting with someone recently who was considering whether or not to come in and help our campaign, and she said, why? Why should I help you? She understood environmental policy, education policy. She understood all that. And I said, well, I guess at the bottom line of all of this is the fact that I fundamentally believe in this moment we all have to do what's within reach. We all have to do our part. I've told a story before, and I won't tell the whole story tonight, but our daughter one night was asking me, you know, please don't do this. And the words that came to me is, I said, sweetheart, when you have a chance to change the world, you take it. That is this moment for us as a country. That is this moment. And so I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in November. In November, when we win the governorship, all of us, The story's not going to be that this guy, David Jolly, was elected governor, or Tal Rico was elected senator, or Ossoff was reelected. I think all that's going to happen. I do. But that's not the story, folks. That's not the story. The story's going to be that Florida's voters for the first time in a generation, in the midst of an economic crisis when the nation was broken and divided, in a deep red state gripped by the politics of Ron DeSantis and gripped by the President of the United States, the home of MAGA, in that state, Florida's voters stood up and did something that hasn't happened in a generation. They built a new political coalition rooted in the democratic values, that the economy should work for everyone, government can improve our lives, and everyone's rights should be protected. And they did it alongside independents and Republicans who said, you know what? Yes, now is the time for a new political coalition. And when we do that, we provide the answer to the last 10 years of division and anxiety and brokenness of the country. Because we will have emerged as Democrats building a coalition bigger than our own party, but reflecting the strength of who we are as a country. And when we do that, I get to honor the words to my daughter, and you get to honor the words that you share with others. Sweetheart, we just changed the world. That's what's going to happen in November, y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, y'all. Thank you. I know you talk about public donations and not taking any private money, but I'm wondering with advertising and when it gets close to the election, how are you going to keep fighting and get your name out there when they start the corruption with the money that they have and start with the advertisements on TV and all the BS, frankly? How are you going to fight all that just by us, just by people?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, the good news is, well, the bad news is Byron Donalds has $100 million. The good news is we only need half of what he has, maybe a third of it. Listen, we have been fortunate since we got into the race. Our small dollar donor base is over all 50 states and all 67 counties. I think we have 42,000 separate donors right now. We will have sufficient money to reach voters, which ultimately is what you use candidate and campaign money for. I do worry in this environment. It is something I worry about, which then becomes the urgency of how do we make up for it. The truth is, every dollar is used to reach voters, but there's another way to reach voters, person to person. My father, as a minister on High Attendance Sunday, would say, each one reach one, right? The fact is, between now and November 3rd, if each one of us are out there every day saying, hey, we've got a governor's race, there's a guy named Jolly, I'm supporting this campaign, you should check him out. Each one reach one. We're currently scaling up our field operation in real time so that we can deliver that type of specific touch. We just have to do that. And look, I'm not going to give away how I hope to tackle public financing in the state of Florida, but I got a plan when we get there. And I'm going to let all the lobbyists pay for us to get to public financing of campaigns. They're just not going to realize it when they're doing it. But let's go win this race first. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a 9-year resident of Florida and a 77-year resident of the United States of America. I am the granddaughter and the daughter of a law enforcement officer. I'm a former Foreign Service employee who have spent years of my early life and my adult life proselytizing and advocating for the values of the United States. I am presently appalled, and I ask my question with regard to immigration, and I applaud your opinion piece. My concern is, what are you going to do for the rest of the immigrants who live in the state of Florida, who contribute to the economy, who are hardworking, who are trying to become citizens? And in the past few days, I have watched them be hauled out of bakeries in Lake Worth, picked up on the way to work. This is not what we should be doing as citizens of a country where, give me your poor, they come here for a reason.
That's right.
And it doesn't have to be Haiti. So I want to know, if you become governor, what are you going to do about 287G?
Yes.
And don't tell me that you're going to encourage them not to file. I want to know if you're going to do away with it.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that question. I think we should suspend the 287G agreements immediately. I do. Until we ensure that due process is protected, meaning show us your face, show us your badge, and show us the judicial warrant. And they're not doing that. But listen, we can tackle this a couple different ways. I'll also tell you, this governor is not fighting crime in the state of Florida. He's fighting a community. He's fighting a community. The truth is, there's a higher propensity of property and violent crimes in native-born American communities than in our immigrant communities. But this governor is trying to convince us that the greatest threat we face is the undocumented worker who's shown up at the job site every day for 12 years without so much as a speeding ticket. That person deserves a pathway to legal status, not to be sent to Alligator Alcatraz. I'll also tell you, I think Alligator Alcatraz will finally be closed, but if it's open, I'm going to shut it down on my first day in office. We're going to shut it down. You mentioned the Great Colossus by Emma Lazarus, the words that are inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. All of us recognize that line, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. Folks, I grew up in Miami during the Mariel boat lift, and we rounded up Cuban refugees and put them in the Orange Bowl behind a chain link fence. And the politics seemed tricky at the time. Bob Graham, Mayor Ferre, Jimmy Carter tried to figure out what to do. They couldn't figure it out. Mayor Ferre goes to the microphone and says, if we're unwilling to welcome the refugee, we might as well throw the Statue of Liberty into the East River. That's right. I talk a lot about values ahead of policies. Let me tell you the values that should guide this. That line, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. What many of us don't recall is the line just before it. It says, keep, O distant lands, your storied pomp. Meaning old world nations, keep. You're rich, you're famous, you're fabulous, you're most successful. Keep them. Send me, your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The homeless, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Behold, I lift my lamp by the golden door. Those were values, not policies. We are a nation strong enough to welcome the economic and cultural contributions of the undocumented worker. And for my Republican friends who say, oh, that's crazy talk, guess what? I'm just where Marco Rubio was 10 years ago, where Bush 43 was, where Ronald Reagan was, and where Bush 41 was. I'm not sure I've changed on my immigration politics. I think they have. And so I think we should be a state that pursues legal status as best as we can at the state level. I know there's the contention with federalism on this one, but it can start by not letting our local law enforcement agencies round up the person who doesn't even have so much as a speeding ticket on their record. Yes, sir.
Good evening, future Governor Jolly, that I'm sure of. My name is Luis Garcia. I'm a retired firefighter permanent running Florida House 91. You're saying all the right things. I have great respect for you. I've heard you many places. I need to make sure that if I am fortunate enough to turn Boca Raton blue and you see me as a freshman representative at the age of 60, that you're willing to buck the norms, because I think part of the problem is we have an old guard, even in the Democratic Party, state, federal, and local. We do have people who go in and enrich themselves, and they forget the altruism, the self-centeredness, the moral compass of why they should be doing what they're doing. I'm going in there for that reason alone. I'm going to reverse everything, and I just want to make sure that what you're saying here will translate to supporting a freshman representative, even though that's going to buck the norms. I have great respect for seniority and propriety, but I'm going to go in and do what's right, not what the old guard said we should be doing.
You know what?
We need change.
I think as governor, I can empower legislators on both sides of the aisle more than this governor ever has. Listen, there was a budget impasse not because Democrats controlled the legislature and the Republican in the governorship, but because Republicans controlled everything. I think the opportunity to empower legislators is fantastic. Tina's already told me when we get elected, we're going to sit down and meet with every single elected legislator so that we understand their priorities and we begin a working relationship and we empower our freshmen. So yes, sir, we'll do that.
Our current state CFO, I won't even mention his name. It's like in my religious tradition, we don't mention people who are persona non grata. But the man doesn't even have a baccalaureate degree. Nothing against people who just have a high school education, but don't you think the CFO should at least know how to work a spreadsheet, how to calculate profit and loss, like, you know, minor subjects. What are your plans for a new CFO for the state of Florida?
Well, there are some candidates running for CFO on our side of the aisle, and I would suggest checking them out. Here's what I will tell you, and very seriously. I intend to test the limits of the governor's office, the executive authorities. We're not going to violate the Constitution. Too many politicians are willing to do that. We're not going to do that. But where we can test the limits, we're going to do it. And I'll give you some examples. I think we need an Office of Civil Rights in the governor's office because I think our Attorney General won't do it. I know the legislature will fight me on this, but whether or not that can have investigative authority, subpoena authority, budget authority is going to be a hard fight. But we might have to move initially, making some decisions under executive authority, let it be challenged and see. I also want to try to litigate some issues that haven't been litigated and our Attorney General won't. What's an example? I would like to enter the governor's office as a party in the open carry case and appeal the open carry ruling because our Attorney General won't. I think we can also pursue some litigation around safe access to reproductive freedom, even as we fight for the language of Amendment 4. And when it comes to the CFO's office, if he's so focused on these wild Doge audits with, let's say they have 15% merit, but 85% is bluster, well then let's attack the 85% of bluster, and where we can use the executive authorities of the governor's office, we'll do that as well to keep them in check. So, yes, sir.
I spent 36 years teaching up in New York, very happy with that whole situation. Come down here, very unhappy with that situation. And so anyway, just to let people know, it turns out that this year, the voucher program is actually destroying public education. How are you going to deal with this voucher program that cost $4.5 billion this year and $3.9 billion last year, and which the $600 million is unaccountable for? There's no transparency, no accountability, and this is all bogus because it turns out, according to AI, 80-something% of people who are using this were already in private school and they never been in public school. So
That's right.
It's really destroying the whole situation.
Through executive authority, when we appoint an education commissioner, we're going to use all the powers we can to put additional rules, responsibilities, and accountability on the voucher system. We're going to empower the public school system every way we can through executive authority. We are going to work with the legislature as well, and if we keep electing people like Emily Gregory, we're going to break the supermajority, and that veto is going to matter. That veto is going to matter. I hope we don't end up in this situation, but I might be a governor that shuts the government down to show we really mean business. Right? We might have to play hardball on issues like that. But then when it comes to a major education move, 10-year renaissance in public education, I do think we have to move to a ballot initiative and take it straight to the voters. We've got to fight this on multiple fronts. Yeah. Very quickly on vouchers, because some people, look, in lay terms, I'm not the subject matter expert in education, but I'm going to use lay terms. Choice is represented by voucher schools, nonprofit charters, and for-profit charters. First of all, I think we should do away with the for-profit charters altogether. But the nonprofit charters at least run through local school board accountability, and I think that probably could become a venue for choice, provided we first fix all of the public education needs that we have. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming here. Name is Bruce Harris from Boynton Beach. I have a question that when you become governor, you may be facing your first year, maybe your third year, and in 2031, redistricting issues from the Republicans. How do you plan to stand up to them?
Yeah, thank you. So my time as an independent, I helped organize the independent space, and adjacent to that is the electoral reform space. Myself, Christy Todd Whitman, Andrew Yang, and some others tried to tackle a lot of these problems. Before the Supreme Court Calais decision, independent redistricting commissions, which I'm a big proponent of, had a few fail points because they could wrongly impact majority-minority districts, and so we were cautious about independent redistricting commissions. I do believe in a post-Calais environment, post-Supreme Court decision environment. We could be a state that moves to independent redistricting commissions. I do think state voters would support that, and for Democrats, I think it could swing back 4 to 6 seats. Listen, when we win the Florida governorship, understand the structural change for national Democrats. All of a sudden, the road to the White House runs through Florida in 2028. The electoral votes in Florida matter again. But for Hakeem Jeffries, yes, we could be in a position of muscling back 4 to 6 seats using independent redistricting commissions. After the Calais decision, I took some time, and then I kind of knew the direction I wanted to go, and I went to Reverend Al Sharpton, and I said, Reverend Al, help me think about how Florida could lead the way in a new voting rights era from the South. And what we arrived at was bigger than just voting rights, right? Economic, education, healthcare disparities within an Office of Civil Rights, but also perhaps independent redistricting commission supported by the voters of Florida that would survive the test of Calais in the Supreme Court. So, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm from Boynton Beach, and this is the third time I have heard you speak, and you are on fire.
Thank you.
You are on fire.
Thank you.
And I am so happy to hear it. And as I look around this audience, this auditorium, I see something that kind of bothers me. We are all of a certain age. And I want to know how you are going to attract the younger voters.
Yeah,
I have grandchildren who are in their 20s and their early 30s who are Florida residents. I want them to be excited. I want them to be on fire.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did see recently the average age of a voter is 48. The average age of a registered voter maybe 40, 42 or something. And you're right, so it starts with begging. I beg a lot. I say, please help us. The good news is Chris Wills is helping organize, and I think we have some of our Gen Z folks in the room today. We have over 100 campus organizers and state volunteers specifically within the Gen Z community. What I have learned in most of the campaign cycles I've lived through is young voters, much like independent voters, are a very late-breaking demographic, right? The urgency of the moment starts to build, and then you see it. And at that point, we have to be a campaign that has built a home and a platform for the younger voters. It is not as simple. I know this is going to sound so true, but I'll save someone here tonight who's going to give me this advice. It's not as simple as putting me on TikTok. I'm a 53-year-old white guy with salt and pepper hair, and I'm not cool. And if you put me on TikTok, I look weird. But we do have to invest in the infrastructure while also making sure we have a platform that appeals to young, disaffected voters. Yes, sir. Would you like to answer that question?
You did better than I was expecting. Okay. Frankly, for someone to jump between parties, I was very skeptical coming here tonight. So congrats on that much. I am a Delray Beach citizen resident as well. I was running through a number of questions I wanted to ask you, but I think a big one for me that was front of mind as you're talking about the children that you're raising and the state of the school system. Is there any plans to undo the horrendous damage that was done to New College?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so when I think I mentioned putting in charge of the state university system, people who understand institutional autonomy, academic excellence. We have already built within our campaign apparatus a state university system advisory team that could be capable of directing the future of the state university system in the state of Florida. I'll tell you, I went first to a foundation board member at FAMU. Did you all know that we celebrate FAMU for being a leading, if not the leading HBCU? But did you know that there was a period recently in our lifetime when FAMU had more national merit scholars than Harvard? So this gets to a point of what should higher education look like in the state of Florida? Sure, let's celebrate the HBCU status, but why isn't FAMU an R1 research university where we have backfilled the $2 billion that has been withheld from them? We should actually lead with FAMU being a flagship university of the state of Florida. You only get there when you actually put people in charge of the state university system who understand institutional autonomy. Look, I worry about, and here's the good news, a lot of the people who are on our advisory team are the people that DeSantis has kicked out of universities because they actually know how to do the job and he didn't want them there. We will do everything we can to return, frankly, dignity to New College. The numbers, folks, this is a financial disaster. I believe, don't fact check me, I think they have 6 associate deans at New College now. The University of Florida has 7. The per student spending is like 100x greater than other universities, and the outcomes are at the absolute bottom. This has been a dead ideological giveaway to people who have no idea how to run a university system. It's heartbreaking. And so, yes, we're going to have state university system leadership to try to remedy that.
I've only been in Florida for a couple of years. I used to work for the Kentucky Democratic Party until I moved up here. And I just want to point out that Kentucky, like Florida, went to the dark side in terms of Republic and stuff. But if you look at Kentucky, we've elected a Democrat governor, Andy Beshear, so I think it's good for a good point for you guys.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. You know, this is, folks, this is part of how we win. You know, some Republicans will say, what should I say to my Republican friends? And I say, tell them that we're trying to cut their insurance by 60 to 70%. Maybe that'll do it. Tell them we're trying to renew a public school environment that they want to rush into instead of having to take a second job to send their kids to a choice school. My point is, governor's races get litigated very differently than Senate races. When we litigate, right, I haven't mentioned tonight, I think, the President of the United States. I haven't mentioned him once. Yeah, right? Many of you are saying thank you. Some are saying, wait, I brought my no king sign. God bless you. Look, I've made my position on the President clear, but this race is about, can you stay in your home? Do you know where to get health care? Are we educating your kids? What Bob Graham used to talk about, the smart administration of government? Are we investing in clean air and clean water? And is your community safe? And when you do that, you get an Andy Beshear in Kentucky, you get a Steve Bullock in Montana, and you get a David Jolly in the state of Florida. That's what we're trying to do. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here tonight. And my question to you is, what is your stand on capital punishment and capital punishment?
The question, I'll repeat the question. The question is, what is the stand on capital punishment? And folks, this is a very serious conversation. Not to be made light of. This may be the 4th time in 14 months I've gotten this question. The governor holds a very sober responsibility of signing a death warrant. This governor in his last year has decided to accelerate it to historic numbers. And I believe maybe even half of the nation's death penalties or executions now this year have occurred in the state of Florida. Before we even get to the moral question, I have grave reservations about the fidelity of the criminal justice system to produce results that provide sufficient confidence to sign a death warrant. And so when asked recently, would you sign a death warrant? My answer was, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of soul searching in that. There's a lot of soul searching in that. What I know is there are disparate outcomes within our criminal justice system. Historically, that has proven absolutely true. I also know there are very grievous crimes for which there is no mistake that a heinous crime was committed at the hands of somebody with a depraved heart who deserves the absolute administration of justice. I do think, to answer the question deliberately as someone who's asking to hold the public trust, that my first step as governor would be to order a comprehensive review of where all of the death penalty verdicts and cases and death warrants sit, and a study of the fidelity of those decisions before I would ever approach a final decision. I'm just being honest with you as a candidate. I don't know that we get that from all of our candidates, but that's where I'm at. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming again tonight. I was one of the 200 that drove through the monsoon last time.
Have you dried out? Because it was.
I have dried out, although very hot. So I live in Boynton Beach, and my husband and I moved here 16 years ago from Los Angeles, California. So bit of a culture shock. And first, thank you for speaking in complete sentences. You have to win, because if you don't, we're moving to Spain now. I'm serious.
My wife says Tallahassee or Paris.
It's pretty much like that, yeah. We have it all planned. So I want to just sort of fire some stuff at you, and you can answer what topics you want. But I would love to know where you stand on data centers, specifically Project Tango, flock cameras, which are all over Boynton Beach now, and I didn't vote for that. The other thing is, will it be possible to get PBI named back to PBI?
All right. You know, it's funny because, because on that last one, I have thought so hard about how to do that. And I promise you I will be in the fight with you. Maybe it starts with transportation dollars and at least getting some of the signs down. I know we're not going to be able to control some of the federal designations, but consider myself a warrior in that because I don't want to fly through that airport anymore. We'll close with this question then on data centers and flock cameras. On data centers, I have already called for a moratorium on data centers. I was saying a one-year moratorium, and the reality is there's no reason to be arbitrary about the date. The issue is we need a moratorium until we get three things right. First, we need the environmental protections as it relates to particularly water in the state of Florida. Second, I don't think we're ready for the labor disruption that all of this is bringing, but very specifically on a microeconomic level, the economic payback of these construction jobs is not sustainable, and you end up with this massive footprint with very low economic impact for a facility that is using far too much water and driving up costs to utility payers and taxpayers alike. So first, until we have the environmental protections in place. Second, the labor protections and economic case study for it. And then third, this is not directly related, but it is. It's tertiary to it. I worry about the privacy and safety protections. And I give credit to Ron DeSantis for something that his office has continued to zero in on. That until we know that artificial intelligence is not emotive enough to convince a young person to take their own life, then we have a problem. And so I've called for, I started saying a one-year moratorium, but the reality is a moratorium until we solve the environmental issues, the labor issues, and the safety issues. But this all leads back to the environmental plan that, in 1985 we had a smart growth plan. In the 90s it was amended a little bit, or maybe in the early 2000s amended a little bit. But the idea was recognizing that Florida's economy is going to continue to grow. People are going to continue to come here. So what is the master plan for how we balance that growth? The reality is Rick Scott walked away from it, Ron DeSantis abandoned it, and now we're a state that denies climate science and we're not even allowed to use it to inform our policy. We need to get back to a smart growth plan in the state of Florida. There's a lot that has to happen before we ever allow data centers. And I would say, as someone who thinks every day that we need to lead with local control of taxes, of exemptions, of spending, local control of decision making. If a local community wants to paint a rainbow flag, God bless you, I'll buy you a can of paint, okay? And so I challenge myself a little bit on saying a state moratorium, but the reality is I think the state has a responsibility for the environmental protections, particularly of the state's water, to actually, at the state level, offer a moratorium. On flock cameras, for those of you who don't know who flock cameras are, what they are, they're all around us. There's some in the room tonight, probably your Ring doorbell, your Blink doorbell, all the little cameras everywhere that are accessible. I actually have a little bit of history of this. You might remember there was a shooting in Southern California, I believe, or Texas, about 12 years ago, and the shooter's Apple iPhone held evidence that would have allowed the case to be brought against the shooter. And Apple refused to hand over any of the information to allow it to happen in defense of privacy. And I offered what was a very simple legislation. I was using the appropriations process for it, but basically get a judicial warrant. And with that judicial warrant, if there is sufficient evidence that that phone has data that could lead to the prosecution of a shooter, then it should be made available. I think that's a simple standard to put on flock cameras as well. Shut down all of the availability of data and information in the flock cameras without a judicial warrant. Right now, I think what's happening across Florida, it's true with the data centers and it's true with flock cameras. There is a reason that the tech bros and the data centers have given so much money to my opponent, and it's happening in states across the country, because if they can just keep the politicians looking the other way, they're getting away with everything they want right now. And the reality is we have stewardship responsibility in government to say, no, we're not going to do that. So,
Quick question. You were here a year ago almost, and you talked about going all around Florida, and we know how red Florida is. And how is it going for you going into the red areas is what I wanted to know. Is it encouraging? Have you been encouraged?
Yes, thank you for that. You know what's great about kind of being in a post-ideological space and rejecting all the labels? It doesn't matter the community I go in, my message is exactly the same. Exactly the same. The economy should work for everyone, government can improve our lives, and everyone's rights should be protected, their dignity celebrated. And you know, in red communities, it's interesting. I try to impress upon my Republican friends and those who might be in the room here tonight. Look, I talk about ending culture wars, not out of some big platform of progressivism, but the old school Republican platform of staying out of your bedroom and staying out of your doctor's office. I talk about returning to local control because government closest to the people knows best. Those are old school Republican arguments. And I also say when it comes to the responsible social investments we've made since World War II to create the strongest economy for the most number of people, I say to my Republican friends, I'm not asking you to change your beliefs, I'm asking you to remember them. And what I mean by that is this. It was Ronald Reagan in his second or third budget who closed corporate loopholes so that they could fund additional human services. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower that gave us the interstate highway system, creating the greatest amount of geographic and economic mobility the country had seen. And it was Abraham Lincoln that gave us land-grant universities during the Civil War, understanding that the more people have access to education, the more opportunity they have and the stronger country we become. Those were Republicans that did that. And so I asked my Republican friends to just reflect on where the values are. What's going to happen going into November is the other side of the aisle is going to try to scare us. They're going to try to scare us. They actually already admitted that. Randy Fine recently said, the side of the aisle, the side of the aisle that's going to win is the one that can scare their people the most. I just have a different view of where we're at. And so when we've gone into the red communities, look, I've been in Milton and Molino, places with 91% Republican voter registration on the Alabama border. And we've turned out 100 or so people. And I know the numbers. That means we're getting independents and Republicans in the room. It also helps, I guess I'll close where I start. Look, I think most of us can relate to people's lived experiences. For some, particularly in the Panhandle, speaking of my faith is a language they understand. Having hard conversations about how I reconciled my personal faith teachings with my advocacy for reproductive freedom, that's an important conversation to have with some communities that haven't had that conversation with a Democrat before. Talking about the responsible social investments in housing, healthcare, and education, while recognizing what has traditionally been a Republican principle of incentivizing and allowing the private sector to thrive. Saying, I'll be a Democrat that wants to continue to see the economic growth in South Florida, but I don't want us to become the Hamptons. Because when we do that, when we lose our working class, when we lose the economics, we lose a resilient economy and we ultimately lose our people. Part of this is shattering the conventional framing that we've let our politicians put in front of us. We see it every day, and I guess John Heilman keeps saying, stop being an analyst and start being a candidate. But here's a little bit of analyst for you. I think on August 19th, they're going to come at us just like Paxson went after Talrico. Communist, socialism, trans, boogeyman, this, that, and the other. I think that's what they'll try to hit us with. I don't think it'll work. But you know what Talrico did? Talrico fired back, you're a convict who cheated on your wife. I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I don't think people...
He did both.
I hadn't thought of that. Oh my gosh, you're right. Listen, I'm going to take a different approach for this reason. I think we are in a moment in our politics where we want to believe in something better. And I'm not being cavalier and naive, folks, when I say this. Look, if we're in it to win it, we're going to fight hard, and we're going to be in the trenches. But in some ways, I'm willing to lose the race on the premise of believing that we're better than this, believing that as a people we're better, that there are enough people across the state of Florida that know in this moment we can do it. Now, that means hard conversations. Believing in better means not being bought. Believing in better means not letting the utilities and the gaming companies and the insurance companies and the for-profit schools make decisions on behalf of Florida's kids and Florida's families, because we shouldn't do that. Because being better means that we're rising above all of that nonsense. But I don't think we have to engage in the crazy to build the coalition. And I think there are enough Republicans available to us that'll say, okay, I'll be with you on that. I was just speaking to the Florida Association of Counties. And it was interesting. I stood up, and for some reason I thought, given the big property tax debate, it must be a somewhat Democratic-leaning room, concerned about what the state's doing, preempting their ability on taxes and spending. And then as I started to speak, I realized, uh-oh, this is a Republican room I'm speaking to because of the gerrymandering of so many of our county commissions. So I stopped and I said, okay, I don't know who knows my history, but I was a Republican for more years than Byron Donalds was. Sorry for that. Whoever's offended by that, I'm sorry. It's true. He was a Democrat until he decided he was a Tea Party Republican in 2010. And then I spent 5 or 6 years as an independent, and I found my home, and I'm a proud Florida Democrat, not a reluctant one. What I said to the room is, but I know this. I know that Tallahassee has preempted your ability to determine the right decisions for your county. And I know they're trying to control how you tax and how you spend and how you celebrate your own community, and I know that you know that's wrong. This Republican governor has done that to you, Republican county commissioners, and the next Republican governor will do it again. But I'm standing here as a Democrat saying I believe in what you signed up for as a Republican, that local control is best. And I think maybe we should consider the whole new homestead exemption debate by returning it to the county level. Why is it that the counties are responsible for taxing and millage, but the state decides what the exemption should be? Maybe it should be different for Miami-Dade and Palm Beach and Collier than it is for Levy and Lafayette, because what's right for Miami-Dade might bankrupt Lafayette. We had this conversation, and as I left, several Republican county commissioners came up to me and said, if this is how you're going to run between now and November, we're going to be with you. That's where I think we have the opportunity to run. Hey, folks, thank you for the opportunity.